Okay, we're going to be looking at the effects of UV light on organisms. We're going to be looking at two different organisms, Staphylococcus aureus and Bacillus subtilis. Both of those are gram-positive organisms. Just to let you know, Bacillus subtilis is a spore former. We're going to expose the organisms after we inoculate on the plates, expose them to UV light. So we're going to have an initial plate which will be no exposure. Then we have one plate that will be exposed for 5 minutes to the UV light, 10 minutes at UV light, and 30 minutes under UV light. The plates, I've left this plate upside down so that you can see half the plate. I'm just going to do a streak of Bacillus subtilis, and on the other side of this line, do a streak of Staphylococcus aureus, so we can compare easily, after we incubate them, the growth and the effect of the UV light on one organism as compared to the other organism, and compare the length of time. So we're just going to do a simple, not an isolation streak, we're just going to do a simple streak on this. So I'm going to start with Staphylococcus aureus, and it's in a liquid culture. We're just going to flame our loop as usual, and from the liquid culture just do a simple streak down on the half of the plate on that section that is labeled for it. As always, work near your flame. These will be incubated for 24 hours, and then we will look at the results after that time period. Okay, so now that our plates are inoculated, the first plate is our control, so that will not be exposed at all to the UV light. We're going to start with the different time periods. We have 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and 30 minutes. What we will do is plastic does inhibit the UV waves, so we need to take the lid off of the plate when we go to do this. There is a UV light in here. We'll take the lid off, we'll place this over, turn on the light for the appropriate amount of time. Just remember, whenever you're doing this, if you do it in person, do not look directly at UV light. You don't want to damage your eyes for that, so you do need to be careful with that. Once the time limit is up, then we put the lid back on the plate and we will incubate the plate. Everything's 24 hours. If we start over here, this plate, we worked with both Bacillus subtilis and Staphylococcus aureus. And so at room temperature and no exposure to UV light, we inoculated this plate. So you had very good growth of the Bacillus subtilis. There is some growth of the Staphylococcus aureus right in this area. We had some competition, and Bacillus is out competing the Staph aureus at this point on this plate. But we did have growth of both. This plate right here, we inoculated, and then the plate was exposed to UV light for 5 minutes to test the effects of the UV light. We don't really see Staph aureus growing. You do have Bacillus that is growing and has managed to grow around the plate. Remember, Bacillus produces spores, so that is a protective mechanism. This plate now we had exposed to UV light for 10 minutes. So you can see there's a decreased amount of growth. I suspect on this plate for 10 minutes, the growth is due to the endospores germinating, and you have now the new vegetative cells from that. And then this plate over here, exposure time was 30 minutes to the UV light, and at this point it did kill the spores, so you have no growth whatsoever. The Staphylococcus aureus was not able to survive the UV light at all on any of the time limits. Bacillus subtilis, it was able to survive 10 minutes, but you can definitely see the difference between 10 and 30 minutes. 30 minutes exposure killed not only the vegetative cell, but it also killed the spores.